Welcome to OnCore Live and our last webisode of 2023. I'm your host, Robin Bell, and on today's show, we're going to be taking a look at the year ahead as we welcome guests who will share their knowledge on manufacturing and marketing to help guide your business in 2024. We're going to have a Q&A at the end of the broadcast, but you can send those questions to us throughout the broadcast, and we'll address them a little later. And post those questions in the Q&A tab on your meeting toolbar and not in chat, please. During today's OnCore Live, we're going to be talking to Julie Krebs, Principal Brand Advisor with marketing firm Virtual Brand Advisors. Julie shares the top 3 actions companies can take to market themselves in 2024, including identifying what makes your company unique. Julie offers several ways to highlight your unique position through web and social media. To get us started today, Robert Schoenberger, Editor-in-Chief of Industry Week, will share with us Industry Week's 2024 Manufacturing Outlook. He'll tell us about how inflation, interest rates, and employment will impact the economy and industrial landscape next year.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me. As Robin said, I'm Robert Schoenberger. I am Editor-in-Chief of Industry Week. I've been here for about 2 years now. I also direct Smart Industry, and I'm the Editorial Director for Endeavor Business Media's manufacturing group, which includes brands like EHS Today, Material Handling and Logistics, New Equipment Digest, and several others that you see listed here. I've been writing about manufacturing for a little over 20 years now, mainly in the auto industry. I was the beat reporter for the Cleveland Plain Dealer, writing about the auto industry for about 7 years. I covered autos for the Courier Journal in Cleveland before that, in Louisville before that. And I ran the magazine Today's Motor Vehicles for about 7 years. So been around automotive and heavy manufacturing for quite a long time, and enjoy doing that at Industry Week. Industry Week has been around since, in one form or another, since 1882. We are now a digital publication, still focused on the management and leadership of manufacturing operations. So we're a great go-to source if you want to look for information about Kaizen, continuous improvement, technology that can help businesses become better at what they're doing. But we're very, very focused on that manufacturing world.
And our viewers are getting ready to experience some of what you offer. Why don't we talk about Industry Week and how they recently produced the 2024 Manufacturing Outlook, right? Walk us through some of the insights on inflation. How do you see inflation impacting the manufacturing sector next year?
Great. Yeah, we conducted a webinar last month where we collected some really great economists from across the spectrum to go into what are the ground rules, where are we right now, and where are we heading. And so one of the big issues is obviously inflation. That has been the story of the past 2 years. We just got new numbers out this morning. Looks like November was actually fairly good. We're up 3.1% year over year, which is higher than the Fed would like. They still want to stick to a 2% number, but much, much better than some of those double-digit increases that we were seeing last year, especially. And so and here is the curve looking back to 2019. We had very flat inflation. This is the Consumer Price Index. This is collated by the Federal Reserve. And if you look through that 2019 through really early 2021, you had a slight increase, but a fairly flat rate. And then that big jump in the middle you see there is what we were experiencing throughout 2022, this high single-digit inflation rate that really drove cost up on just about everything, which led the Federal Reserve to its massive increases in interest rates through the end of last year and well into this year. Really, costs are high across the board on just about every product, but they do seem to have moderated a little bit. And there's some optimism that maybe things will calm down in 2024. It's very, very hard to gauge. People are feeling very comfortable with where inflation rates are now, which actually could keep inflation high longer, because inflation usually doesn't stop until people stop spending. And boy, the American consumer continues to spend their way through the current problems.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Why don't we talk about interest rate? This is another economic indicator.
Yeah.
How will interest rates impact manufacturing next year?
So, and this is what I was just discussing. The interest rates were near zero or at zero, really for a very, very long time here. These are statistics from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. If you ever need a lot of really good economic data, Fred, the database, is a wonderful, wonderful resource. I highly recommend it. So we went from effectively 0% in interest rates going into 2021 until you see that huge stair step effect where we're now at the highest interest rates we've had in decades. That's where we are now. The consensus, the analysts believe that we're going to kind of stay where we are now through the rest of this year and start peeling back a little bit in 2024. That median number at 3.9% is much lower than we are right now at that 5.5%, 5.6%, but still much higher than we have experienced for the past decade or so. 2025 is looking like the averages are starting to move down into a higher rate than zero, but a manageable number. When the prime rate is at that 2.9%, you're still dealing with an economy where people can afford to buy houses, they can afford to buy cars. It doesn't add that much extra cost to the purchase. When you're at that 5.5, 6.5% rate, it gets a whole lot harder to justify big purchases.
Yeah, yeah. This inspires a little bit of hope, if you will. So, Robert, in recent years, we've seen dramatic changes in the workforce, from the Great Resignation to technology advances to staff shortages. What are you seeing in workforce trends, and how are those trends impacting manufacturing?
Yeah, workforce is going to be a huge challenge for manufacturers and every other industry for the foreseeable future. There are no fixes on the way to really solve this problem. I really like looking at the civilian workforce participation rate. This is the number of people who are either working or actively seeking work. If you remember, we had during the Great Recession or the recovery from COVID-19 and those big shutdowns, there was that common refrain: people don't want to work. And so people were taking whatever benefits they had and not re-entering the workforce. There was some truth to that, but it really is not a complete picture. If we can advance just a little bit here, this time period that I've circled it here, when there were a lot of stories going on about the Great Resignation, people quitting their jobs and going into new fields, and the quits rate, and the number of people voluntarily leaving their jobs every month was going up to this very large number. But if you look at this curve, it's not really that significant when it comes to the number of people entering the workforce and changing that number. And that's because what the COVID declines in employment and then the recovery showed, really we'd missed something much bigger. And if we advance again, you'll see that this Great Resignation was a much older, much larger problem. This is that labor participation rate going back all the way into the late 80s. If you see through the 80s through really into like 2005, 2006, we were still hanging out around that 2/3 of the able-bodied population was either working or looking for work. The decline happened long before the Great Resignation, long before the COVID shutdowns. From somewhere around the mid 2006 range until about 2014, 2015, we had about 5% of the workforce just decide to give up and not participate in work at all in this country. And then, it was ticking up a little bit, starting to recover a little bit, maybe when we headed into the COVID shutdowns. But so this resignation did take place. There was a massive number of people who left the workforce, but it didn't happen when we weren't paying attention. It happened when people barely noticed it. So what we're left with is a workforce that is smaller than it has been. We're kind of recovered back to where we were pre-pandemic. A little, we're still a little bit below, but we're very much in that ballpark. And I think this is what we're going to be looking for the foreseeable future. We just don't have The number of people who can be working seem to be working, or who want to be working seem to be working. So it's now just labor has become a scarce resource. We were just talking before the webinar started today. There's a 67-year-old deli here in the Cleveland area, one of the best in the world, just shut down, not because they don't have customers, they're always busy. It's because the owner, who is getting up there in years, can't handle the workload anymore, and he can't hire anyone to replace it. This is not a manufacturing issue. This is a trucking issue. This is a banking issue. Every employer in the country is going to have to find some strategies to find people to work that they may have not considered in the past, or find ways of reducing the amount of effort that goes into their products, because there's just not a pool of applicants that we can easily tap into to bring into these jobs right now.
Yeah, I think this is not the deli example that we talked about a little earlier. I don't think that's unique. So, we talked about the pandemic, that the workforce took a big hit, but you are questioning when the Great Resignation actually happened. Can you walk us through the insights and the data on that particular issue?
Well, yeah, as I was showing that earlier slide, that was really that time frame starting around 2007 or so. That's when things were going on. This is at a time when you still had really strong participation from the baby boomers in the workforce. And you still have very strong labor participation amongst the baby boomers. Really, the people who were losing the jobs in the largest numbers at that point, and you were kind of that immediately after the Great Recession, leading up to the Great Recession and after it, it was younger people. It was a lot of the millennials who were really struggling to find meaningful work. Some of them stayed in school longer than they could than they planned to. Others, started going to nonprofits or just sitting out entirely. It was very, very much concentrated in those younger workers. It's gotten a little bit better. There have been some improvements, but it's now we're facing the time that if we are we're seeing a lot of companies successfully bringing those people into the workforce, but that's just kind of treading water, because they're coming in replacing a lot of those boomers who are already starting to retire and are going to retire in increasing numbers every year for the next several. So as good of a job as we can do getting these young people into the workforce, it's just going to be a matter of keeping even with where we are right now.
Yeah, we're facing some real challenges with this. So, we've talked about the workforce participation rate then and now. I know you don't have a crystal ball, wish you did. But what can you share with our viewers about the impact of the labor market for 2024?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It has softened a little bit. There was a really nice article in the Wall Street Journal a couple of days ago about some smaller businesses are finding more success than they had been recently in hiring people. Some of the operations that have really been grabbing huge numbers of workers, looks like they may have overhired and are starting to let some of those people go. I think like the Amazon warehouses. About a year or so ago, there were a lot of complaints that people paying minimum, lower wages could not compete with the benefits and the salaries being offered by Amazon. Amazon slowed down, which is good for the rest of the economy. So there are some bright spots that things are easing a little bit. We're not getting a term that I had not heard many times until last year was labor hoarding. Companies that were seeing weakness in orders and might have traditionally considered a layoff or maybe attrition to lower their workforce, not doing so, just making sure they held on to every single able-bodied person they could, because when could you rehire them? That seems to be easing a little bit. We're still not seeing any large layoffs. Unemployment is still at record lows. We just got a report about that last week. There is no sign that hiring has become much easier overall across the economy, but some sectors are doing a better job of it through wage increases, through better benefits. Hiring people is going to be more expensive. So I think if I really want to hold up a crystal ball for 2024, one thing I'd expect to see is a lot of creativity on how people can take labor out of the equation as much as they can, either through technology or better management practices, better demand predictions, things like that. There's gonna be a lot of demand out there for services and systems that can just make sure you can get what you're doing now, getting it done with one or two fewer people, because finding those people is just going to be very, very difficult.
Yeah, I'd say automation is going to play a big part in this too. So Robert, I'm an optimist. I want to focus on hope. What do you mean when you talk about hope is coming?
Well, I mentioned these young people, and there's a reason why we're looking at Minecraft here. About 5 or 6 years ago, I was in a meeting with an engineer at Ford, and she mentioned we were at Case Western University here in Cleveland, and she mentioned that the kids that she was talking to then were interesting, but she was really waiting for the next group, the ones who grew up sometime in the early 2000s. And when I said, what about them so special? And she just said, because they grew up on Minecraft. Okay, fine. I played with Legos. What's different about Minecraft? No, you don't. These are kids who are living in a digital, three-dimensional environment that they build themselves, often collaborating with people all across the world. So you have some of these Minecraft worlds designed with kids in Korea and Germany and South America and in Austin, Texas, all collaborating for fun. And this is something we can't teach PhD level engineers how to efficiently collaborate in 3D environments, and that is where so much of the design is going. So if we can find ways of really understanding how to tap into that, the capabilities of some of these young people just entering the workforce are going to be incredible. It's a very creative group. It's a group that's just absolutely digitally native, has all sorts of ways of really creatively looking at problems, very few preconceived notions. There are cultural challenges, and they're not going to be easy to solve. There are different expectations on how much time they're going to spend on work and how they do it. But the companies that can really get some insight and understanding how those young people work and want to work are going to have a really capable bunch on their hands once they get their feet wet and learn a little more about the working world.
Mm-hmm. We could talk about this for hours. It's been really interesting. Thank you so much for joining us today. This information and your knowledge on the subject has been incredibly valuable. Thanks for this. Be sure to visit and subscribe to Industry Week for more of Robert's coverage of the manufacturing industry at industryweek.com. It's right there on the screen. Robert will be back during the Q&A at the end of the broadcast. And as a reminder, you can send those questions anytime during the broadcast. Please post those questions in the Q&A tab on your meeting toolbar. Well, with us now is Julie Krebs, Principal Brand Advisor with the marketing firm Virtual Brand Advisors. Julie has always been behind the scenes at OnCore Live, so it's wonderful to have her in front of the camera to share her marketing expertise. And actually, she's doing both jobs today. Hi, Julie. Very good to have you with us here today as a guest.
Thank you, Robin.
I'm excited about this, and also to learn how our viewers can market their businesses in 2024.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. It's pretty fun to be on this side of the camera. I'm like, is this what it feels like to be Robin?
Yeah, you're my alter ego, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, why don't we start by having you tell us about yourself and Virtual Brand Advisors?
Yes, thanks, Robin. So I have spent my career in marketing and advertising, and believe it or not, it's been now over 20 years. And back in 2012, if my memory serves me correctly, I was a VP at a large Midwest advertising agency, actually based in Detroit, but I had the office here in Cleveland. And I started to look at my career and say, well, what's next here? What did I want to do in the advertising and marketing and PR space? And I started to look at the network of all of the different contacts that I'd made over, at the time, 10 plus years, whether it was copywriters, graphic designers, videographers, web developers and designers, printers, and realized that I had the makings of a full service agency. But what would happen if you flipped the agency model on its side and actually looked at it from, could you match the right level of expertise to the project at hand, breaking down any geographical boundaries or barriers, and really help companies market their brands efficiently, removing the overhead and working with a small, hand-picked, nimble team that can get the job done right off the bat. And so that is how Virtual Brand Advisors was formed, as a virtual agency structure. Little did we know, in 2020, virtual was basically validated. It had been validated by a number of our wonderful clients, but boy, oh boy, did virtual become commonplace. And so now we still enjoy working with that model, especially helping our clients and then enjoying a work-life balance as well.
Yeah, you were ahead of your time.
At the time.
Yep. So companies spend a lot of time and money spending about their products and services. How important is a brand for a company?
Great question, Robin. So, the reason why, our organization is called Virtual Brand Advisors is because we try to help companies understand that, everything begins with the brand. And I know that this particular graphic may seem a bit overwhelming to our viewers, but do not be afraid. Because when you have a strong brand identity, and that's more than just your logo, that is what you stand for as an organization. It drives everything that you do. So it will drive everything that you plan for. It'll drive what you say and where you say it, whether it be in a news article, that would be PR if you're working with Robert's Group, or social media on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, whether it's online and you're doing some online advertising like Google Display or YouTube, or even at a trade show, quite frankly. What a better place to highlight your brand first and your products and connect them together that at, an event or a trade show. And Robin, that's something that you're certainly quite familiar with, on how the brand and the product world come together on the trade show floor. So that's why having a strong brand is really important, to effectively execute and activate your brand in all of these spaces, where it makes most sense for you at the time.
Yeah, and you don't have to do everything at once. You can start
That's right.
small.
That's
Julie,
right.
how would our viewers think of their company as a brand? Why don't we go to that?
Great question. So the way we look at it is, what is your brand? What is it about you that is unique? And when we think of the brand, it's not what you make, it's why you make it. That's what makes your brand unique and uniquely yours. And so I know that, certainly our viewers, this is a business to business audience, but I do want to point out Disney, because I'm going to venture to say that most of us are pretty familiar with the Disney brand. And Disney makes lots and lots of things. So they make princesses, they make, theme parks, they make movies, they, dominate and make clothes for retail. They make
Merchandise.
cards on mint for Christmas. I mean, they're everywhere. But they do all of what they make because of the why. And Disney is all about their why is magic. You know, that is their brand, is the magic that allows you to dream and to make your dreams come true. And so that ultimately guides everything that brand does and stands for. And that's why they have, you know, they are well documented for having wonderful experiences, for example, you know, at their theme parks. So that's the difference between the what and the why for what your brand, your organization stands for.
Mhm. That's a good example. Would you help our viewers identify and better articulate their brand?
You betcha. Absolutely. So, you know, in terms of, you know, from, you know, a business to business standpoint, you know, every organization has inherently their why. And the way that I've kind of, what you see here on the screen, is really a simple way of trying to think about the why of what your brand stands for. And so I put the sentence here at the top where it says we as your organization, and in the brackets is, you know, basically what you do. Do you create, do you design, do you manufacture, do you engineer, you know, whatever action word you do goes in there. And so it's like we create something, that's where the blank is. And then here's where we get to the why part. And the why part is because we believe in, and then we've got the blank space. So we take that simple statement and fill in the blanks so that if we were, for example, a tape converter, you could say something like, and this is the next phrase down, we manufacturers, that's the first part of the sentence, tape solutions. So that's what we make, filling it in, because we believe the simplest way to engineer the machines we use in our everyday lives starts with a strong bond. So that kind of fills in the blank. And when we think about the broader scope of, you know, pressure sensitive adhesive tapes, you know, and everywhere they are, whether it's our automobiles, our washing machines, you name it, you know, adhesive tapes are everywhere in our everyday lives. And so, you know, we create the strong bond. So then if you boil that down to its simplest point, you know, a unique brand statement could look like, you know, simple solutions that bond the way we live. And so that then becomes, you know, your organization's why or your purpose. And then, boy, you could really do a lot to market with that. And that helps to really anchor all the products that you make, and certainly how you talk about them to all of your customers and prospects.
This is a great slide and a great way to approach this. So let's move on. What are some of the ways that companies can market their brand?
All right. Well, you know, for today's conversation with our viewers, I really think about it, you know, what are, you know, kind of the big three? What are the big three things? So the first one is content. And we are in a world where content is king. And it can be pretty much a number of things. I've put here, you know, some four main ones that you know, our viewers may see. We have, you know, blog posts, that's content, white paper, a case study, even a really short video. I mean, even think of the way that these OnCore Live broadcasts are, you know, recorded and posted up on YouTube from Avery Dennison Performance Tapes. So, you know, our inherent conversation today becomes content. But what is great about looking at content for your brand is these are great opportunities to talk about what you make, but also why you make it. You have the real estate in each of these pieces to really strengthen, what your products do and why the organization matters in making those products. And that's where you can use your unique brand statement, from the previous slide. So that would be place number one. Place number two is your website. And so your website is incredibly important because this is your brand voice. This is where you broadcast all about you. You own this space. And so this is a great place to add your content here so it's easy to find. And so your blogs can go here, your press releases can go here, your white papers, even your short form videos can also live on your website. The one thing I will also mention about, having content on your website is that this is where organic search goes. So this is what stems search engine optimization. It's content. Google looks at content and keywords within your content, matches search queries, and drives traffic, to your website in its simplest terms. I do have a couple asterisks here next to SEO, which we're going to get to here a little bit later. So there's a caveat to that. But let's look at number 3. And that is sharing your content on social media. And so social media is great because this is where you can give your website content added reach. And I do want to point out that, members of your organization, I'm gonna boldly guess that, have social channels themselves. So your coworkers are maybe on Instagram or Facebook or Reddit or you name it. And then you probably have your business channel. So I'm just going to venture and say we'll use LinkedIn as an example. So, there are always opportunity to share your content on both personal and business channels, both organic, which is just, you or your brand posting, or you could actually sponsor your post and put a little money against it as form of paid advertising to really broaden your reach and get more eyeballs, on that content. But social media is still, all 3 of these activations, content, website, social media, all work beautifully together. And think about them, kind of as that trifecta for marketing your brand in 2024. If you haven't really thought about it in this way.
You really are breaking this down in a great way, but this kind of begs the question, how important is it for our viewers to take note of these 3 recommendations for their business?
Thanks, Robin. Well, okay, so I mentioned the asterisks next to SEO.
Here it is.
Here we go. So I added a couple points. So Gartner is a world-class, extremely large marketing research organization. Gartner Research does a great job of reports and projections for years to come. And so I added the link to really see the full report, but there were 2 points in here that talk about the top predictions 2024 and beyond for branded content and specifically marketing that I thought our viewers should pay close attention to. The first one that says by 2027, 20% of brands will lean into positioning and differentiation because of AI. That is sort of the big elephant in the room, is generative AI, which is your Chat GPT. So as more search engines, and actually that dovetails beautifully into point number 2, as more search engines start to use AI in their algorithms, and other, users start to just use AI and skip Google all the way, as an example, they're just going to, to chat and skipping Google. All of a sudden, having branded content, meaning those white papers, those blogs, having a strong brand voice, are going to be incredibly important. And 2024 is a great year to get started and do a little bit of this. So, and this is because you want to make sure that, so AI changes everything. Marketers, we are learning how AI is changing it. But by really taking a look at this now and looking for the content that makes your brand authentic, can help dissuade some of the potential, trust issues consumers have with AI. And I say consumers because we all are inherently consumers. And AI is, going to start to ding organic traffic. So we want to make sure that our content is strong, that, we're not giving away necessarily our content for free. So now maybe what we're doing is gating content. So we're getting more leads and we're understanding who's engaging with our content more. So gating content, having very specific keywords to help really more pre-qualify website traffic. That is going to help kind of balance out, some of the projections that AI will have in the marketing and branding world. And 2024 is a great time, for our viewers to get started. Maybe even if you just want to do four things a year, one thing per quarter. That's a great way to get started and start to build up, to pay attention to the impact that AI, will eventually have.
Yeah, it is an open frontier, and there's a lot
Yes.
we have to learn about it. But it is fascinating, a
Mhm.
little scary, but fascinating. One more question for you, Julie.
Yeah.
How can our viewers strengthen their brand's content and their messaging?
So I will say that, you don't have to do this alone. And, there are like-minded brands that, our viewers may already be connected to, where you can combine forces and create something together that you both can promote. And so I have here, here's a great example, Avery Dennison Performance Tapes. So they have a great way of co-branding content. So here is a bonding study with superior felt and filtration. So places where you can combine with companies like Avery Dennison Performance Tapes to really create content together, like a bonding study, a case study, a white paper, a short video, and cross-promote them together. That is a great way to strengthen your brand, and get some extra credibility and validity, on the content as well when you're partnered with someone. So, you don't have to do this alone. And Avery Dennison Performance Tapes is an example, can be a great resource to help.
Mm-hmm. I feel like we could talk about that just as with Robert. These are some really fascinating discussions, and maybe we'll have to continue the conversations next year. Thank you so much for your time, Julie. This has been a timely and important conversation for our viewers and for me. To learn more about Julie and her firm, Virtual Brand Advisors, visit virtualbrandadvisors.com. Well, we are just about ready to move into the Q&A with our guests, but before we do, you still have some time to submit a question for our guests. If you do have a question, post it in the Q&A on the meeting toolbar below. Also, I want to let you know that OnCore Live continues in 2024. Do check your email inbox for an announcement about webisodes that will be coming soon. Well, we've got our guests back with us for our viewer Q&A. Let's get started with our first question. Julie, this one goes to you. Social media, not a surprise. When it comes to social media, there are so many of them. Do we have to be everywhere?
Well, that is a great question. And the simple answer is no. So our point of view and recommendation for clients is, you know what, pick one or two, even just one, and do it really, really well. And focus your time and resources. So for example, since, the B2B world, LinkedIn is really the primary, social media platform for the B2B audience, and do LinkedIn really well. Plan your posts, do a couple posts a week. This is a great place to take a look at the analytics of your LinkedIn page, and you can see the demographics of the folks who are actively on, reading through your LinkedIn profile, and you can tailor your content accordingly. So, so my answer, Robin, would be just do one really, really well. And then after you get the hang of it, and perhaps you get, as Robert was talking about earlier, those staffing resources, you get some more help to really pay attention to that. And then you could start to add, another social platform, but start small and do it really well.
Yeah.
I would just kind of piggybacking on that. It's also, where are your customers? Where are the people you're trying to reach? We spent a lot of time chasing people on, Twitter/X and on Facebook, and we did okay with Facebook. We got some traction there, but it's really gone downhill in the past couple of years. Just they've changed their algorithm a few times. It's really very much a pay-for-play organization now. You have to buy a lot of ads for people to even see the content they have subscribed to see. LinkedIn is by far the best that we use at Industry Week for reaching our audience, for trying to grow that audience and really reach people. But it does vary, especially by geography. I've talked to people in South America, and it turns out that Facebook is a really prime commerce site in South America. So, figure out where which social media your customers are using, because that's where you really want to spend your efforts.
Yeah, that's a good point, Robert. And LinkedIn is really a very good resource. Okay. Oh, we got lots of questions. Not as much time as we have questions. Robert, this one goes to you. With the next generation of the workforce, here we go. Do you have any insights on hiring? In particular, what do companies need to provide to attract the Minecraft generation?
It's a great question. It really comes down to understanding that there are some cultural differences, but at the end of the day, people want jobs. They want job security. They want to have a future they understand. The better you can do showing that, yes, we want you to come in at this position, but here is what that could look like in 5 years or 10 years. This is a generation that was raised by parents who were jumping from job to job to job, and probably realized there was a lot of stress involved with that and a lot of uncertainty. So there has been some research showing that the younger workers do want the thing that the millennials and maybe even the Gen Xers weren't used to, which is some stability in the job force. So if you can show that the position you're offering has a long-term future with growth, with personal advancement and personal development. That is a very resonant message with some of these younger candidates.
Mm, everything old is new again.
Yes.
Maybe a little bit of that. Okay. Okay, so here's one for Julie. Are there any resources where we can go for quick answers to marketing questions?
Oh, great question. So I'm gonna share with you sort of my secret places, which are open to everybody. So highly recommend the Digital Marketing Institute. Great resource. Lots of how-tos, examples, and highly recommend Digital Marketing Institute. I love the American Marketing Association, the AMA, another place, great resources, how-tos, a lot of great examples. Sometimes, you know, the visual is worth 1,000 words, and a great example of how to do it. And the AMA does a great job with that. So those are two excellent online resources for questions and how-tos. The other place I would recommend are some of the platforms themselves. For example, we're talking about LinkedIn. So, LinkedIn has some excellent resources. They have an FAQ, they have a blog. You could just, ask a question, and usually their search query will pull up, how do I do this? How do I do that? So I think that check out the resources of the platforms that you're using for other, tips, tricks, examples, and information that could be really helpful for your organization.
We had another question come in. There's several questions, but this one, I think there are probably several of our viewers who are interested in this, getting a copy of these slides, what we're talking about here today. So we will definitely answer that question directly to that person. We've got time for one more. We're actually out of time, but this is great. So if you want to stick with us for just another moment or two, I'm going to send this one. Oh, yes, this is Robert. Our organization is trying to bring resources back to the U.S. after offshoring to accommodate staff shortages. What are you seeing for 2024 specific to bringing back resources and staff?
Yeah, it's a big trend. We've been seeing this for a few years now. Really, the use of the movement to China really kind of overpromised and underdelivered when it came to pricing for a lot of companies. They expected to save a lot more money than they did, especially as energy prices in China started rising, and during the aftermath of the pandemic, shipping prices and the supply chain problems we all saw really drove a strong message that you cannot rely entirely on overseas production. What we're seeing really is some coming back to the US, but a lot coming to Mexico, where it's close enough to get some of the advantages of North American trade, but still low cost labor and things like this. There are resources that are coming to bear on this. There are a lot of state and federal programs that are making more money available. There's some tax benefits that have been approved that for reshoring efforts. And there's definitely a push by a lot of different federal and state governments and a lot of different organizations to drive this. There's been a lot of positive signs in the past few years, and I think it's a trend that will continue. But when you look at the bulk of the money, I think is going to come to Mexico this year and into next year. But longer term, what the argument that a lot of people have been making for years, that what you lose in wage rates, you make up for in productivity with American workers. I think that still stands. And there are a lot of companies that have been able to justify sitting down with that pencil and paper and really figuring out their costs and their every input and output, and have been able to justify building in the US. And I think we're going to see more of that. How much more, I don't know, but it's one of the macro trends we're watching.
Yeah, that's to be determined. Well, Julie, Robert, This was incredible. It is a great way to end 2023. Looking forward to 2024. Thank you both so much for this today. That's it for this webisode of OnCore Live. Thank you for spending time with us today. We look forward to seeing all of you next year. From all of us at OnCore Live, have a wonderful holiday season and a very happy new year.